Lovely. And I just realized I hadn't set the recording, so now we did. So today we are going to talk about cleaning up messy data. Someone was just asking where the music came from. It's a playlist that I created with generative AI. I'm happy to share it later. So uh, if you signed up between, I would say yesterday at 11 a.m. and now, you may not have these instructions. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to share the manual where you have the instructions on how to download OpenRefine, and then you will also share this link over here, which is where we are going to be getting our data. So just give me 1 minute. I'm just going to get that for you. If you did get the email and download everything, you should have the link to the manual, but you can also just get it from us from the chat. It's right over there. The manual is fantastic. It was created by Robin, who is, my co-host today, and it is simply wonderful and so easy to follow that it will make this workshop go really smoothly today. So let's get started, and we're going to first talk about what is messy data and why do we want to clean up messy data. So messy data is basically data that is either disorganized or incomplete. It'd be better if I share my PowerPoint. Incomplete or inconsistent, or it contains mistakes. And what happens is the data becomes difficult to handle because the systems that we use to read this data can't really understand it. And it needs to be cleaned and transformed in order to be used properly. So some common characteristics that we have for messy data, or things that would tell us that something is messy data, is first of all, missing values. So there's numbers or things that we don't have. Inconsistent formats. So because a lot of times data is recorded by different people, then they may be using different formats. A very easy one is the date format. If we working on a project here in Canada with people from the States, we may record the date, month, year, whereas in the States, they would do month, day, year. So that's, we would have different dates or date formats when working with that. We have duplicate entries. So sometimes a record for some kind of reason was recorded twice. There might be data entry mistakes. We also have unstructured data. So usually people, maybe if it's a number or a date, but it was entered as just text, that means that the system might not be able to read it the way we want it to be read. And sometimes we have data in there that's just not relevant to the analysis. So we kind of need to clean all that to be able to do what we need to do with the data. And why is it an issue? Well, there's a couple of reasons, but mainly it's problematic for research. It impacts the validity, reliability, and efficiency of our data. So it threatens validity because if we have messy data and we're not really counting all of the data properly, then we might come up with the conclusions that are incorrect because we're basing them on data that is not properly has not been properly cleaned. It can also lead to issues with reliability because if our data has not been cleaned and then someone else wants to use our data to replicate our study, we may have issues that way because they might not be able to get the same results that we did. Data integration issues. So if we have unstructured data and we're using a variety of data sets, then we might get some inaccurate analysis as well. Messy data is difficult to analyze. And the example I have here is actually, this is a little excerpt of a spreadsheet that I have in my computer that I use when I'm buying books for the Hispanic Studies department here in the library. And what happens is I buy books from a variety of suppliers. And because I do Hispanic Studies, some of my suppliers are not in Canada or in the States, they're actually in Spain. And if you're Francophone, you will know this as well, but in Spanish and in French, decimals are represented by a comma, but here in Canada, in English Canada and in English in general, we represent decimals with a period. So what happens is that I get all this books. So I get my list of books and my list of prices where I keep track of how much money I've spent. But when I want to calculate it, the system has issues because it can read both periods and commas. So it will only, my computer, because it's set to English, it would only look at things that have a period to add all those columns. So what I have to do whenever I'm working with these files is I need to change all my periods to, sorry, all my commas to periods so that I can actually tally up how much money I had spent on books. And then our last one that we have, our last reason why messy data is an issue is the compliance and ethical concerns. So because if our data is not correct, then we might not be following ethical guidelines, and we may be presenting results that are not true. So I'm not going to go through this slide because it's just something for you to have once we share our materials, but just a little glossary of what the different things for OpenRefine are. Just note 3 things we're going to be talking about today are facets, clustering, and transformations, and they are going to help us get really good at cleaning up our data and having lovely, lovely files. So with that said, I'm going to now let Robin take over, who is our OpenRefine expert.
All right. Thank you, Marcella. And thank you for that really good framing. So hopefully that gives you guys a sense of the importance and the why and the where of it. I am going to share my screen. And so I think I'd also like to give a few caveats for this workshop and what we're going to do and just kind of help you get along for the ride. So you have the guide. That's great. Hopefully you have OpenRefine ready to go on your computers and you're ready to work along with us. The guide is designed so you don't have to like frantically try to write down the operations while you're trying to do them and while you're looking at a screen and then you're looking at my screen. It all gets a bit much. So hopefully this takes some of the load off. You can follow along. Or maybe you just want to sit and watch and hear and see what we do. And that's fine too, whatever you're comfortable with. I think it's also important to note that um, workshops like this are very curated. This is more like a cooking show than it is like real life. So we're going to show you a slice today of what OpenRefine can do. It has a lot of options. It's very powerful, but we're going to start small. And what we'd like you to be able to do today is do a little bit of cleanup of some data. We're working with survey data today. It's pretty clean, but it's also been cleaned specifically for this workshop. So every step we do is just going to work the first time, and that's by design. When you use OpenRefine by yourself, that might not happen, and that's okay. All right. Any questions before we get moving? Everybody ready?
And as you go, so as Robin sort of drives, I'll be monitoring the chat and looking at questions. And I may share things that if you can easily copy paste if you need to.
Excellent. Good. Anyone? Oh, okay. So let's get started. So the first thing we're going to do is open up OpenRefine, which if you're there, should look like my screen here. You'll notice that the interface is pretty simple. That's fine. It doesn't change much from between, but what you will see throughout this entire tutorial, and I hope that I can convey to you, is that you have options, and it's designed to be really flexible. OpenRefine as a tool is also really not an end destination. It doesn't really do data analysis, although you can do a bit of a scan with your data, which Marcella and I will show you in a few minutes. But it's really about getting your data ready for somewhere else. And you will find that everybody uses OpenRefine a little differently. I personally, in my previous job, I was doing metadata work, so I would often use it to help me clean up subjects and words, for example. But it's also what we're going to do today is it's good for getting something ready for Excel. If any of you have ever tried to do a pivot table or worked with any data, you know that when you're dealing with data in a string, every variation matters, and it can be, I always get surprises when I make a pivot table. I'm like, where's that category from? And sometimes when you get a data export, you get what you get, right? So this will help you judge so you can put it in Excel and make your life a little easier. There's some overlap between what Excel and OpenRefine can do, but I find that OpenRefine is a little bit easier for the things we'll show you. So with that, let's get started. So options. You can import a bunch of different kinds of data and from a different sources. So you can go from your clipboard, so you can cut and paste and like slap it in there. That's kind of great from a database. Google data, back many years ago now, OpenRefine was actually developed by Google and it was called Google Refine. So fun little fact. So you can actually go from a Google Drive. You can also go from any web address. So if right now you're like, I don't have the data set downloaded, you can get the link and just slap it in. You can just slap it in right here into the URL. But I'm going to go from this computer. So I'm going to choose my file. And there's my set. And then I'm going to click next.
Robin, well, this is marinating.
Yes.
We have a question. Is there a limit on how big the data set can be?
It can be pretty big. It can be like, when I say pretty big, I mean like thousands and thousands of rows. So I think if your data set, I've loaded things, it gets slower, of course. I've loaded things that have had 10,000 rows. It's a little sluggish, but it'll do it. So, but there's not like a firm limit. It's not like, oh, it's over 10 megabytes, you're done, kind of thing. It will, because it will slow down your computer though. Like if you're going to be using a large file, you're going to want to make sure you have some RAM. So here is the loading screen. So again, we're not in there yet and we have options because we don't know what we're going to get with our data set. In this case, ours is pretty clean, right? So our preview page looks pretty good. We have our headers. Everything looks like it's in the right place. And if you look down in the options, you see that there are a whole bunch of different file types that it can read, and it'll change the output. You see, if I put it in line-based, it changes the format completely. We don't want that. That was a little scary. But we have it in CSV, TSV, so spreadsheet-like format. Commas, it auto-detects a lot of the things. Again, this is well-formed. You want to make sure that if you have headers, that they're noted. So that's why we have the parse next line, because the top line for us is the header. If you didn't have column names, you can add them. So you would just check this bubble and like comma separate them. And then the other thing, going back to Marcella's points about data, if you have blank rows, right, do you want to keep them? I always keep them. And then do you want to store blank cells as nulls? And that means if the cell is blank, it's going to write null, which is useful in certain applications, right? And so there we go. Everything looks good. So I'm going to create the project. You can also change the project name here, but at any point in time, I'll show you where. So it creates the project. Come on, there we go. And so this is your main screen. This is where we'll be working from. So if you want to change the name, I want to call this data wrangling. I'm just going to do that right here. It's done. So what's really good about OpenRefine is that right now, we are not working on the file that's on your computer. We are not touching the main file. This is creating something different that we will have to export later. So you take a wrong turn, or you're not sure, or you want to keep the integrity of your process by keeping that original file, you're set. You don't have to worry about saving an additional version at this point. So, and now for the screen itself, so we have the spreadsheet. We'll take a little tour of the columns in a second. It's going to default to show you 10 records, like 10 rows at a time, which is how we are now. I like to max it out because I like scanning, but if your file is really big, it might be a little slower. But that's up to you. And then on this screen here, we have the tab. We have a facets and filters tab, which will help you scan and do some of the data cleaning, which we'll get into more detail. You'll see that in a second. And also what I think is one of the best features about OpenRefine, and that is that it tracks every single step you take. And it's going to be kept here in the history. And not only can you use it to go back and forth, but you can edit it and then export it and save it. So if there's something that you do every month, I wouldn't do it for like super complex functions, but if you're always removing white space, you're always removing blank rows, you're always changing title case and then splitting one thing into two columns, for example, you can just keep that recipe and then do it over and over and over again, saving you time. You just apply it and put it in. Any questions about that so far? Am I going a bit too fast?
No, we're going well. It's all good.
Okay, good. I have a tendency to break the sound barrier, so I just want to make sure that I don't go too quickly. All right, so now a couple of ways that OpenRefine works. Again, it's options, options, options. It mostly works by column and row. So when you're editing, it's about editing across, not necessarily one thing at a time. And that's really the power of OpenRefine. And so the things that you'll be able to do are then in the columns. So if you're looking for a way to like flag and star all the way down, if you only want to do a select number of rows, you can use the star or the flag. It's as easy as clicking. And see, you see that undo up there? It means that like you can just click that and undo it anytime you want. And then what you're going to have in your drop downs in the columns are all the options for you. So you see edit all columns, facet, edit rows, edit columns, and then view. When you go into the actual specific columns, the options look pretty much the same, but what you'll be able to do is different. So the first thing you have are facets. And this is a great way to help you. Like I said, this is what it's going to do is it's going to look down in a column and find all of the like things and put them together. And that's going to depend on your data type. And these data types are consistent with other formats. So for example, you have numbers, right, which are read as numbers and may have decimals and all those other things. And then you have text. We are working primarily with textual data today. And so we're going to be working with text facets. And the way that text facets work is that they are a string. So that means every character matters and every character reads differently. That means case reads differently. That means if there's a space at the end that's been added by either a human or the data, or it's from how it's split, it's going to read as a different thing. And that's going to affect the ability of a machine or another program or platform from doing its job. So you will see that in the guide, there's always options to do a bit more later, but we're going to start simply, and we're going to look at the village column. So again, this is survey data, and it's also a census data. So it's data from a cluster of villages in Africa, and it's like a census. So they want the name of the place, when the survey was done, and then there's like things about the composition of the house and the things that they owned. Okay. And so that's kind of what's there. So to show you what a cluster looks like, we're going to go to village, and we're going to go to facet, and then we're going to go text facet. And then you'll see that over here, we have a menu, and it's nice and tidy. It's not always going to look like this, I'm telling you right now. I hope I'm not scaring you, but I want you to be ready. It's okay. And then what you see here is you have 8 choices. So what it's done is it's gone through and it's looked for all the different variations and put them together. And now you have options. You can sort by name. So this is like alphabetical order. And then, or you can go by count. Maybe you want to see what the most popular is to the least popular. But what you're going to see here now is you might see some interesting things going on, right? Like I see some options are a little close, like these two guys or these two guys. Something's going on, right? So you also have the option right now, if you want to, you see how you have edit and include. Depending on what you're doing, you can have them counted as part of your list or not part of your list. We're not going to worry about that now. And there's also the option to edit over here, which you can kind of do one at a time, right? So for example, these guys, 37 to 1, I'm pretty sure this is an oopsie, right? It's pretty sure it's a mistake. So if you wanted to, you could go in and fix it. But we're not going to do that because we want to show you clusters.
Okay, so I'm going to talk a little bit about clusters because it's my favorite thing that just But Robin, just very quickly before that, we have a question on whether we can automate changes on OpenRefine.
Yeah, so you can do that with the undo, you can do it a bit. So you can do it with the undo redo history. You're able to extract it. So I could like select or deselect all the things and then export it. And then it makes a file and then I can apply it to my data.
Oh,
So
lovely.
again, that's that use case for that set number of functions that you're going to do at a time. Does that get at your question?
Hopefully, yes. If not, we'll go back to it.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm going to talk a little bit about clustering and why I love it so much. So as Robin showed us, we have some village names that look kind of familiar. And like this, this data set is what we're seeing right now is not as big, but sometimes you could have these really big data sets and it may not be as easy just to see them on this list. You might not know things. So what clustering does is it allows us to very easily identify those kinds of things that could be the same, but we're not sure. So typos, abbreviations, case differences, or different spellings. I was thinking this morning, a good one for us who live in Montreal, we know that if you are an Anglophone, you might write Montreal without an accent. If you're a Francophone, you might write it with an accent. So we had survey data from people from Montreal. We may have those two different spellings of Montreal. Another one example is if you have to say like street. So some people may just put like the word street or may just put like ST. So what clustering will do is it will help us find those. So we're gonna go ahead and do it. So we are on that village facet that, we already prepared. And we're going to click on the cluster button that we have there. Lovely. And we're going to see that there is a drop-down menu that says method, and then it says keying function. We can try different versions to see what kind of things it pops out. For us today, we're going to do key collision, and we're going to do metaphone 3. And we're going to cluster it. And now it's going to make suggestions for us of things that we may want to cluster. So we have here, there's two things. This is Raka and Ruka. And then we have Raka and then followed by another word and Raka followed by that same word, but there is a spelling difference. So once we are kind of happy, we can click the merge box next to each data set. And then click on merge selected and recluster. So we kind of run that, it will run that analysis again and see if there's anything else that we are missing. That's it. Once we have, we can play with different versions and different options to try to find more things. And if not, we can always just change it. There we go. Until we find no more. Eventually there might be some that you may need to do by hand, like we saw before, like we had the alphabet, the two villages that there's obviously like a spelling mistake in there. You might just need to do it manually. But this just saves you a lot of time in that sense. So it's we're letting the system think for you a little bit and be able to do it. Lovely. And just so you know, on the manual, we're going through everything, but if you want to practice in the manual, there are exercises for you to do for each of the things that we are showing you. Robin, you want to go back?
Yeah, sounds good. So any questions about that? All right. So like I said, you can look through and do quick edits, and then you have the clusters for the fuller ones.
Robin, we have a question.
Oh,
yes,
good.
Victoria, go ahead.
I'm sorry.
Yes, hi, can I speak?
Come in.
Yes.
Yes, I was trying to type, but you were going too fast. I was wondering why didn't it pick up Cirdozo, Cirozzo? Why didn't it pick up
Yeah,
this
I'm
cluster?
actually not sure. The algorithm is imperfect. We just might not have tried the right cluster. Here, let me go a little faster. So we'll try fingerprint. I usually walk through them. The algorithm is a little different for each one. Metaphone 3 is usually the one for this list that works a bit the best. Okay. I'm gonna try cluster. Yeah, so it's not going to pick it up, but we can see it, right? So at this point, you might want to look it up just in case 37 people are wrong. But I'm going to change it manually. And it's as simple as that. So with that, any other questions on clustering? If depending how we go on time, I can show you a bit more. Like we're going to be creating more facets at a certain point, so I can show you a bit more. But now what we're going to do is we're going to transition to some transformations. I'm just going to close this for now. And so what transformations are is it's how OpenRefine refers to making these kinds of global changes per column, right? Or per row. And the way that you do that primarily is through what's called GREL, Grel, which is the old acronym is Google Refine Expression Language, but now I believe we call it General Refine Expression Language. And we're going to show you a few of that. The syntax is pretty easy to get to. You don't have to worry about it today. We're going to give you all the options and give you some resources to help you look at that. And so what we're going to do with some transformations, there are also some canned ones that we've already seen, and we're going to do some of those now. So we're going to go all the way over, apologies for scrolling, to items owned. Come on, my friend. Yeah, see, and so what we have here, so what these represent are instances in the survey data where people were able to pick more than one thing at a time. And so this is how the system ported it out. And so what you see in items owned, you have a square bracket, you have single quotations around each term, and then a semicolon separating them all. This is well-formed data. This is great. We can work on this pretty easily. And so what we're going to do is we're going to go into our dropdown. We're going to go to edit cells, because what we want to be able to do is not have these all together, because when you put this in Excel, it's going to read as a string, and that will make us all very sad. We want to be able to take the values one at a time. So we're going to go into edit cells, oops, transform. And then now what we have is, yeah, general refine expression language. So again, you have other choices. You never have to look at this drop-down menu again. You can stay in GREL. But there's Python and Clojure, if those are two things that you use. And so what's nifty is you have a data preview, and the expression has a validator. So it's going to tell you if you're making a mistake, which is, in my humble opinion, super helpful. So what we want to do is we want to get rid of all these extra characters first. And so let's start with the square bracket. So when you want to take something out, right, we always start with value. That's how most expressions start. And then we're going to use the action. See, it's telling me there's a parsing error because it's not complete, which is great. And then what we want to do is, in this case, now this is like a little less intuitive, but like this is just a quirk of how GREL works, is that we're going to replace something with nothing. That's how we remove the character. So we're going to do value replace, and then we open a bracket to start our phrase. And then what we're going to want to do is put what we want to remove in quotation marks, have a column, have a comma. I said column, sorry about that. Have a comma, and then nothing. So 2 quotation marks right in a row. If you put a space, it's going to replace it with a space. And then close. And so now green means go, no syntax error. I'm going to try it. On the bottom, you have some options, which I really appreciate. I am a little paranoid when I work with my data. I'm a bit of a hoarder. I don't want to do anything that I can't back up to very easily. So what I'm going to do is keep the original if there's a mistake, right? And then sometimes if you have to do something over and over and over again, like if you're just removing a space or a couple of spaces, you can retransform up to 10 times. So just do it over and over and over and over and over. We don't need to do either of those things. So now I'm just going to click OK.
And I pasted the Grail syntax into the chat if anyone wants to just copy paste it from there.
Yes. Excellent. Thank you. It's very helpful. And so now we see that it's kind of, now we have no front bracket. And now we have to get rid of the rest of them, right? So let's try this again. So we're going to go to edit cells, transform when we have our window. Anyone want to guess what we have to do? Value.replace. Learn how to use your keyboard. So that's going to get rid of all like the little single quotes. That's done. And then all that's left is the final bracket. So that was pretty quick and easy, but you may be thinking to yourself, Robin, is there a faster way to do this? And the answer is, heck yeah. I'm just going to hop over to the no food mitigation column for a second, because it has the same regular form. You want to transform. You can put them all together. And the way that you do that is you go value.replace. You're going to go one thing at a time. So something with nothing. Then you're going to go dot replace, open, and then our next guy. And then dot replace, and then your next guy. And I don't know why they're guys, but to me today they are. All right. And then you do that again. And now you have it all done in one step. So it's a little faster. So you can tag them on. You can also dot different functions, like some of the different actions, but depending on what they are, there's a bit of an order. So the guide will help you with that. And so that's that. Does that make sense? String, any questions? Oh, I see something in the chat. Okay, perfect. All right. So, we're not done yet. So now what we want to do is we want to split, right? So now we've gotten rid of all the extra characters. Now we want to split. So we're going to go back into our friend. And now the function is split. So the split function is really good for regularly formed data. And you get to pick the character. So in this case, my quotation marks, we're going to split on the semicolon. And it did not work. What did I do? I don't know why it's not working. I'm going to try one more time. And then I'm going to try another column.
I'm just gonna answer a question. We're trying to split the column that says items owned,
Yes,
but it's being annoying.
it's being annoying. This is actually only one way to split. So I will show you the other way in a second. This is a newer version. So yeah, I don't know. All right. Well, it worked for me before. It's not working for me now. Refine. So the other way. So what it should look like is it should be giving you the facets on the side without moving the data. So the other way to do it is to edit cells. So now what we're going to do is create a separate row. And so this is not the harder way, but maybe the slightly more complex. So we're going to go split multi-value cells. Our separator, again, is our friend the semicolon. We have other options. So if your data isn't this clean, sometimes you have a transition sometimes you have to guess. And that's why you have these options here, like a transition from numbers to letters or fixed field lengths. If you know it's always the first like 8 characters, for a date, for example, you can just set it to do that and then split out. So you have a bit of agency there. We have well-formed data with a separator, so we're just going to go for it. And so then what you see here, come on, my friend. And so now you see the data has been changed substantially, right? You see a new row. It's still nested, right? It's still nested in the data, but now there's a new row for each item. And then if I wanted to do a tax facet, it's nice and clean.
Robin, can you show us again where we would go to do the second thing, to do what you just did?
Yes, I'm going to hop over to the other guy that we just because I mean, I can undo, but I'm just going to leave it like this. So what you would do is come over here, edit cells, split multi-value cells. And then you pick your character. So for us, it's the semicolon, and then we go. And you can see it's done that again. And so when you want to split into rows, you go cells. Does that?
That's great. Yes.
Very good.
And I can vouch because like I've done Robin's manual that the other like the custom facet works. I don't know why it's not working today.
I
The
know,
custom version. But I can vouch that it works.
Maybe some of you are doing it at home. I'm just like, I don't know. This is an open source tool developed by a community. It's been around for a long time. It has a little bit of a personality sometimes. We have to show it some compassion. So I'm sure it's going to work later when I try it again after this workshop. So that's that. And then if we wanted to, for the no food mitigation, we could do facets and show that. Any questions before we move to splitting data into columns? Does anybody want to like look at something again, try something different, see a different spot? Okay. All right, we're gonna move. You can leave the facets open. It'll just stack them one on top of the other. I just don't like doing that for my own brain, but you can leave them there. So what we're going to do now, so you saw how we can split going down across the rows, but what if you want to split data into multiple columns, right? Like for example, what if you have a bibliographic citation and you want to split it out, right? You want title in one place, you want author in another. This is your ticket. So what you can do You'll do. Oh, come on. Sorry, I lost my mouse. I went to the other screen. Okay, this is what I'm going to do. I went a little rogue showing you an extra example. So now you're going to learn the undo. So I'm going to go backwards. We're going to go back to there. So I don't know if you saw that, but I clicked on the earlier step and I went back there like magic. So now we've gone back in time. And now the items owned has all of these values in the same property. So I showed you how to do it by row. Now I'm going to show you, let's pretend you want to put these into different columns instead. So you're going to go to edit column and split into several columns. And so your separator, again, is that semicolon. And as you can see, it looks pretty much the same. It looks pretty similar to the other menu, right? For the split into rows. You can cap the number of columns. You can add an expression. You can do by field link again. Guess cell type, so that's going to do whether it's a text or a number, and remove this column. Again, I am paranoid. I uncheck that because what remove this column will do is it'll split according to what you say and get rid of the original. I find it's easier to do the function, look and make sure I like it, and then delete it. You do you. Maybe you're doing this a lot, but I just find it's a little easier to back up. So we're going to want to separate on the semicolon. And then here we go. And it didn't work. This is unprecedented. All right. So what we do.
We'll just blame it on the snowstorm. We've had a terrible snowstorm here in Montreal. We'll just blame it on the snowstorm.
So I'm just gonna.
But I had people in the chat saying that it worked for them as well. So maybe right now, Robbie, your computer is just angry with you.
I know. What's going on? But like we can just do. I'm gonna do livestock owned. Now I'm just like now it's like my honor is besmirched. Anyway, maybe just to show you very quickly is that there are some options that you can see in the column that are popular to help you about moving the columns and adding column based on this column and reconciliation, which is an advanced function that we could do in a future workshop, or you can contact me about if you're interested in. And that what reconciliation and enrichment do is they pull data in from other sources and plop it into your spreadsheet, like an ISBN or a DOI. So if you guys are doing it on your own, we've proven that my computer is being a bit of a cranky pants. Do you want me to try another column or shall we keep going? Oh, I see 4 things in the chat.
It is 11:48.
Yes.
So I would say let's keep moving, and then if we have time, let's come back to it. But it
That
seems like it has
sounds
worked for people.
It's as long as it's working for you guys. Okay, so then we're gonna join.
Someone's saying that it actually worked on your computer. It just took longer. You were just not patient enough.
Oh, that tracks.
It's the first time that we're redoing this workshop, so you know, a little bit of nerves.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. I'm not sure why my computer and I are not in sync. I don't know. So it's okay. So now we're gonna join some stuff. So we'll go over and we're going to go back to the village information, if I remember correctly. And what we're going to want to do, so let's pretend that we have this information here, about province, district, ward, and village, and we don't want them to be separate. Maybe we want them all together. It's great that they came to us separately, but how we're going to be using it, we want it together. So what we're going to do is go into edit column, because what we're doing is on the column itself, right? And then we're going to go join columns. And what's really great is that it will give you you don't have to type it in. So you can just check as you go. And so what we want to add in this case is province, district, and ward. And what we would like is to put a character, because otherwise it's just going to put them all together. And it's going to do exactly what you say. So we want a separator. So we want a comma and a space. And then you have options in case you get nulls. You can replace nulls with something else. You can skip them. Maybe that works for you depending on your case. You can also pick a column that you're going to write everything in, or you can write the result in a new column. So maybe you can put them together and make a new column, or if you want to keep everything. And then also you have the option to delete the joint columns. So I'm going to use write result in the selected column because province is the first one. I'm not really fussed. It's fine. It can all go together. I'm just going to hit OK. It is absolutely not doing it. Come on, my friend. There we go. Ah, you proved me wrong. Good. And so now you see we have it formed with our syntax. Any questions about that? All right. So the last bit that you're going to want to do, so we'll pretend that this is all the changes that you've made. You've had a wonderful time. Oh, question. Yes, it sure is. So now we have more options again, but we want to export. Like I said, we are not working on the file that's on your computer. We've created a new one in OpenRefine itself, and now we've got to bring it somewhere else. So you have choices. You can do it as a tab or a comma separated, an HTML table, Excel. That's what I'm going to do most, but also there's the open document format, right? Which is open source and not an Excel product. And then you have other choices down, including Wikibase. There's really good integration with Wikibase and Wikidata in OpenRefine. We want Excel. I'm going to do Excel 2007. And then it's done. And then we'll see. We'll open her up. I'll bring it over. Are you able to see the spreadsheet?
Yep.
Yeah. And so there you go. There's all your work. All done. And then you're ready to do what you want with it. Send it to a friend, make a pivot table, take a nap. It's your choice.
Robin, we have a question here that is more statistical than what I'm ready to answer, but maybe you can. It says, can we do variable recording here?
Oh, that is, I'm going to go with no. Can you explain what I have a very basic statistics knowledge. So what do you mean by variable recording? If you feel okay, you can unmute by all means. Oh, no. No. I'm gonna go with no, but what I'm also going to do, Frank, if you don't mind, because I have your email from the registration list, is I'm going to double check with, so like I said, everyone uses OpenRefine a little differently. I'm firmly in the humanities and social sciences. I do a lot of textual manipulation, but a little bit less on the numeric side. So I will confirm with some colleagues. Yeah, and I'll answer you in the next, like, probably today if I can. But at the outset, it'll be worse sometime next week.
And I know that we went quickly today, but I will be after today, hopefully today, if not tomorrow, I'll be sharing the recording of the workshop and the slides where you have linked to all the things that you might need. Robin, we can't see your email. I'll just let you know.
Oh, great. Excellent.
Okay, perfect. Okay.
Okay.
Are there any other questions? We have about 5 minutes. Any other questions that come up? If not, that's great. We'll hold on a little bit so that you can answer any questions I may have. So Robin and I push Robin to do things. So, but we've talked about maybe in the future doing a more like numerical data sort of oriented workshop. If there is interest, let us know. And we can kind of begin planning for it. It will not be anytime soon, probably in the summer. We're giving ourselves time. But if there's interest or if there are things that you think that could be useful for us to talk about regarding OpenRefine, let us know, and we're always happy to talk more about it and to learn things ourselves that then we can share with you. So please let us know.
And just as a kind of little moment, what I was trying to get you guys to is I just dropped into the chat an environmental training session that Clemson runs, and there's some numerical data in there that's being run, so you can take a peek. Yeah.
Okay, so people seem to have enjoyed it. So yeah, so wait an email from me, probably either today or tomorrow afternoon, and it will have a link. So we're gonna post this recording on YouTube, and then we're also going to share it, and I'll share that link with you. If you are still interested in data, I just want to do one little plug for tomorrow, where we're having our Love Make Tinder session, where we're going to be looking at dating apps and data and how so we're going to be sharing some information and statistics about dating apps and about what our how people engage with profiles and a little bit about data security and privacy. So that is tomorrow at 1 p.m. If you signed up for this, then you know how to sign up for that, but it's tomorrow at 1 p.m. and it's our last Love Data Week event. Thank you so much, everyone, for coming. And anything else, Robin, that we want to say?
No, thank you. And get out and play. Give it a try. Hopefully it makes it a little easier.
If you have, I'll put our Digital Scholarship Hub email in the chat. So if you have any questions, you can send them our way, and then I triage these emails so I can either answer it myself or I can get Robin, who is the true expert, to to help us out. But just know that those are there. Thank you so much for coming. Have a great rest of your day. If you are in Montreal, please be careful with the snow, and we'll see you again in another workshop.